Ladies and gentlemen, here in the room and in TV land, this is April 29, 2020, the Carson City Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which I've just called to order. Will you please call the roll?
Chair Borders.
Here.
Vice Chair Doors.
Here.
Commissioner Esmine. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Preston. Commissioner Tingle. Here. Commissioner Wiggins.
Here.
A quorum's present.
We want to double check on S1 and Preston.
Yeah, it is.
They may have been accidentally muted or something.
So Preston is, Terry Preston's on. Did she reply?
No, we did not get Terry Preston or,
Commissioner Preston, are you there? Desi, is Commissioner Preston there? Commissioner Eswine, are you there?
Yes, it looks like Commissioner Preston did just join the room.
Okay, and Commissioner Eswine? No?
No, Commissioner Eswine.
Okay, thank you.
well, let us proceed with the,
He showed up.
all right. Commissioner Eswine, are you with us?
Desi, is Commissioner Eswine on?
Commissioner Eswine just joined.
Thank you. So full house.
So we have a quorum of all 7 members. All right, this time would please rise and I'll lead us in the pledge.
President's video is not currently available due to low bandwidth or local computer conditions such as CPU or RAM. What that egg? What does that even mean?
Ladies and gentlemen, in the public and online, we're going to ask a little bit for some consideration as we try to work through this. The first item on our agenda is public comment. If there is public comment, you need to make your notification known. When you are allowed to come online, please identify yourself for the record, and then you can state your remarks. The members of the commission should be available to talk even if they're remote. And we're going to try and move through this without too much comment. So the public is invited at this time to comment on or discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically identified on the agenda as an action item. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment at this time?
We do have some public comment, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Caller number 775-220. It's your turn for a public comment. Please state your name for the record. Caller 775-220. It's your turn for a public comment. Please make sure you're unmuted.
My name is Chris Katopoulos.
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah, Chris Katopoulos.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my comment has to do with, I recently, a few months ago, I had a project review with Carson City Planning, and I wanted to say first and foremost, thank you, Carson City Planning. That's just an excellent service that's offered to project proponents, and I really appreciate it. So what I learned there, we own a house on the west side in Carson City. It's SF6 is the zoning, and our project proposal was
Sir, if I could interrupt you, we're having a hard time hearing you. If you could turn your volume up a little.
Okay, I'm going to take it off speaker. It's up all the way. Can you hear me okay?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay, I'll leave.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my project proposal was to build a separate detached rental unit on our corner lot in SF6. And what I learned at the meeting or at the review is that I would be allowed to apply for a special use permit to build it, to either turn our house into a duplex, which we definitely don't want to do, because to us it would just degrade the property, or we could build a separate detached 700 square foot unit that cannot be rented, which sort of defeats the purpose. It's a really suitable lot, for this type of infill, in our opinion. It's got 3 driveways coming into it, 2 of which lead to the back area. There's already an existing carport that has basically the same footprint that the unit would have. And so my comment essentially is that it's just, I'm not really seeing the logic in the fact that I could build that 700-foot unit and attach it to my house, but I can't set it away from the house by 5 feet or whatever would be required by the planning department, and go that route. So there is no special use permit available for that option. And I just wonder if that maybe warrants another look by the commission, and perhaps some sort of change to that would be beneficial.
Mr. Chair, Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. I recall this applicant, and he described his review correctly. We did bring up to the applicant that the Planning Commission is currently reviewing Title 18 and would likely be reviewing those restrictions on accessory dwellings. And I believe that's why he's calling to voice his comments on any consideration you give to those regulations.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there more comment?
No, that's all I had, and I very much appreciate you listening.
Thank you very much. Is there any further
Have
public
a
comment?
great evening.
All right. Is there any further public comment at this time?
Donald McCoy, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record. Donald, it is your turn for public comment. Mr. Chair, it does not appear that Donald is available anymore.
All right. Is there any further comment out there?
I do not see any.
All right. Then let's move on to item number C for possible action, approval of the minutes of February 26th, 2020 and March 25th, 2020. 2 separate actions. Let's first consider the minutes of February 26, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, could I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting of February 26th, 2020.
I already have a motion from Commissioner Tingle. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Perry. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, motion carries. The next item is to consider for possible action the approval of the minutes of March 25th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, we have a motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Carson City Planning Commission meeting of March 25th, 2020.
And is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of March 25th, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Modification of the agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order.
Hang
Yes.
on, are you getting any feedback? Are you getting the votes from the commissioners online? Because I'm seeing a lot, all right, I'm seeing ayes now, so I can talk, but I still, somebody, can you pause? Can you hold for a minute? I'm
Certainly.
getting things that people aren't hearing and.
Alex, are you online? Commissioner Dawes?
Yeah, I just got online.
All right, we can hear you now. All right, are we set to continue? Modification of the agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion related to an item on the agenda at any time. Are there any modifications from staff? How about
No.
how about the commissioners? Hearing none, item E1, LU 2020-0009 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request to amend a special use permit, SPU 10-014, to allow for a 400 square foot outdoor classroom and 120 square foot office addition to serve the existing greenhouse on property zoned P for public located at 1111 North Solomon Road, APN 010-04164.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is seeking to construct a 400 square foot outdoor classroom and 124 square foot office addition next to the existing office. This is an amendment to the 2010 special use permit, which was issued to allow the construction of the greenhouse as an outdoor classroom and office, to construct the greenhouse. The outdoor classroom and the office were not included in the 2010 special use permit. That's why it's before you for a modification. The proposed improvements will help enhance the existing greenhouse project, which is part of the high school's career and technical education program. The location is very internal to the site. I have up on the screen a picture of the site, and you can see a red arrow, and I'll kind of highlight it for you. Identifying, it's right here, identifying where the improvements will occur. They're next to the athletic field and next to the existing greenhouse if you are able to go out there. So it's very internal to the site and shouldn't have any off-site impacts. We have not received any correspondence on this particular application. As the commission knows, when you consider a special use permit, you're considering the 7 required findings of fact. Staff has reviewed each of those findings of fact in the staff report and has been able to make those in the affirmative, subject to the conditions of approval. The staff is recommending approval of this special use permit. Chris Baker from Manhart, I believe, is on the phone on behalf of the school district. I'm happy to go much more in depth if you'd like. You've received the elevations and detailed site plans, and I'm happy to answer questions if the commission would like more information. Thank you.
Hope, the only question I have is why are we amending an old permit instead of getting a new one?
The school district, when they brought this forward, felt like it was part of the greenhouse project, and that when they built the greenhouse and that was associated with the greenhouse, so they specifically requested that we we handle this as an amendment to that special use permit. The findings are the exact same findings, so the procedure is the exact same procedure. They pay a 75% fee versus a 100% fee.
Are there any other questions for staff? How about on our remote commissioners? Any other questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, can we put the applicant on?
FYI, the applicant is texting that they have sound issues.
I did speak with Chris Baker earlier today to confirm he had reviewed the staff report and to determine if he was okay with the conditions of approval or if he had any concerns. In that phone call earlier today, he did advise me that he had reviewed the staff report and he was fine with the conditions of approval. So I will relay that conversation. I clearly can't speak for him in the school district. I can only tell you the conversation I had.
Okay. Well, is there any public comment at this time? Hearing none, let's go ahead and bring it back to the commission. Any commissioners have a comment that they would like to make or question? All right. Would someone like to give us a motion?
I'll make a motion.
There you go. Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record. Commissioner Dawes.
Commissioner Dawes for the record. I move to approve special use permit LU-2020-0009 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Perry. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. LU 2020-0002, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow a detached accessory structure that exceeds an aggregate 75% of the size of the property structure on property zone Mobile Home 1200 located at 2699 Dory Way, APN 008-183-26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is seeking approval of a 540 square foot detached carport, which would cause the cumulative total area of the accessory buildings to be 96% the size of the primary structure. The carport has already been constructed and is located behind the house. However, if you were able to go to the site, you'll see it's very difficult to see it because you have the house and you have a solid wall. So if you look, there's a sort of a circle cut out in the wall, and you can kind of see it. It's there. There is a peach building as well that's behind the existing garage. That both the carport and the peach building were built without permits, so they do need to do their due process and seek the special use permit. The peach building behind the garage will need to be removed because it's violating setbacks. This is an area of the city where the property owners have detached buildings. I have up on the screen a slide which shows you, it's our base map and our GIS system, but you can see on the various lots, multiple buildings. That's just kind of how things work in this part of the city. So it's not uncommon to have multiple outbuildings in this area. Per CCMC 1805055, if the cumulative area of the accessory buildings exceeds 75% of the size of the primary building, the special use permit is required. When you consider your special use permit, you consider your 7 required findings of fact. Staff has reviewed those findings of fact in the staff report, and we have been able to make those in the affirmative. Therefore, the staff is recommending approval. The applicant, Ruben Garcia Ruiz, I believe is on the phone. We have spoken with Mr. Ruiz today, and our understanding is he has reviewed the staff report and that he is okay with the conditions of approval, but hopefully he's able to join us this evening on the telephone. I'm happy to go more in depth. I did put up the site plan for you, which just shows the carport directly behind the house, and it shows that the peach building behind the existing garage will be removed. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Yes.
So we're asking Mr. Ruiz to remove one of the structures because it doesn't meet setback requirements. And so because he built the structure without permit, right?
If he met the setback, he would probably be requesting permission from you to have a special use permit for that building as well. But your issuance of a special use permit doesn't resolve the issue that he's violating a setback. So because he violates the setback and because there aren't grounds for a variance, that building will need to be removed. As you can see on the site plan, there's not a lot of room to work with behind the house. They've kind of used a lot of it. Now, should he want to come back with another building in addition to the carport, and this is in the conditions of approval as well, that would be a modification to the special use permit because we'd be going beyond the 96, I think it was 96% that he's proposing at this point.
Is the existing garage a dwelling unit?
Not to my understanding, but the property owner can speak to that.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Is Mr. Garcia Ruiz on the line and available for us?
I do not see or hear Mr. Ruiz.
Okay. Are there any other comment from the public?
Sorry. I have a comment.
All right, well, if there's no other public comment, then we'll bring it back, and then Commissioner Tingle.
Okay, I walked that neighborhood a couple of times this last week, and there's some interesting topography along that route, and I'm just thinking that I am really sorry that Mr. Ruiz will have to tear down that particular building because of the setback issues, because there's any number of interesting stuff going on in that neighborhood. So I just, and I understand the setbacks and all, but anyway, there you go. Like I said, walk that neighborhood and it's interesting all on its own.
Are there any other comments?
Yes.
All right.
I have a question.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes, and this is in comments on the recommended conditions of approval and probably more in the case of some questions too. So the carport is built, and I'm assuming it was built without any kind of engineering standard or a stamp or anything like that. So the applicant now has to go back and have someone review that and propose it and have a, I'm assuming, does it require a wet stamp for something like this?
That would be a building code question. I can't speak specifically to that, but he will, essentially, he needs to apply for a building permit. When he applies for a building permit, it will be routed to planning. At this point, planning will say it exceeds 50% of the cumulative, the accessory buildings exceed 50% of the cumulative area of the primary structure. Therefore, planning cannot sign off on that building permit. So he needs to obtain his entitlement, which he's doing now, and then he can seek the building permit just as if he had never built it in the first place. So the process is going to be the same from the building perspective, whether he built it, he got his permit in advance or after the fact.
Okay. So the building department will review it and look and see if it meets code.
Yes, they will.
Okay. The other two questions I have, the driveway apron must be removed and replaced. There is an apron there, it's concrete, it's continuous, along there with the sidewalk. Why would it have to be removed?
Our engineering department, is Stephen Pote on the call?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Stephen, can you
Can you guys hear
answer
me?
the question? about the driveway apron?
Yeah, so currently the driveway apron doesn't appear to meet ADA standards, so that's why it's required to be removed and replaced.
Okay, I guess I don't know what ADA standards are in comparison. That's all the sidewalks and driveways in that whole neighborhood are the same, so just curious. Stephen, can you explain what ADA standard is in this and why the existing entrance doesn't meet the code?
Yeah, so ADA stands for Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's specifically looking at cross slope and that sort of thing, so a wheelchair utilizing that can get around. My recollection of the subject parcel is that there's not sidewalk all the way across, but in the event that sidewalk did go along that whole alignment, you would want the cross slope to be accessible for folks with wheelchairs or visually impaired people and that sort of thing.
Okay. And my last one is the driveway must be paved and must be at least 12 feet wide. So past the little ramp there where the sidewalk and ramp are, it's all gravel. So basically what we're requiring the applicant to do is to pave the driveway around his house and back to this carport.
That's correct. So that's a standard, just a development standard that's applied regardless of whether or not you need a special use permit as paving of driveways wherever you're going to have vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, Commissioner Doris, for the record, I have a question. I was experiencing some audio just difficulties, kind of hope when you were explaining, but I think I got this right. The reason they have to remove the 840 square foot detached garage is because of a setback issue, and they wouldn't be able to leave it because that's a variance thing and not a special use permit thing. Am I wrapping
No,
the reason for removal is
no, the attached garage is not, it doesn't have to be removed. It's the building behind it, the storage shed.
the storage shed?
I have
Okay.
it up on
I
the
see it says
screen.
storage shed.
Can you see
Yeah,
this,
can you put
can you
that
see
back
the
up?
other screen? Or if you look in the applicant's,
There, I can.
look in his file,
Just to clarify, the building that needs to be removed.
Okay, I have that in front of me. Or-
Okay, it's the
Go ahead.
Peach Building, if you were out there, that's directly behind the garage. It's 480 square feet, but the rationale that you just outlined is correct.
Okay, all right. So yeah, it's not the garage, it's the shed. Okay, understood. Thank you.
all right, are there any further questions? Motion?
You know, honestly, on the Cisco thing, you got Ruben Ruiz, I believe, asking about being able to speak and stuff. So I'm not really sure if he's been given the chance to do
Yeah.
that.
Is Mr. Ruiz back on the line now?
Desi, do you see our applicant, Mr. Ruiz?
Mr. Ruiz, are you there?
Yes, you can hear.
Yeah, sir, Mr. Ruiz, are you okay with the conditions of approval for the special use permit?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, just I wanna make sure it's 12 feet wide, paved all the way to the carport. Is part of the conditions.
That's correct.
I think that I'm clear, so it's going to be, I accept the condition.
Okay. All right, I know we've already had public comment, staff has commented. Can I have a motion then?
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Perry?
Chairman. Commissioner Perry here. I move to approve special use permit LU 2020-2 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz.
Thank you.
Item E3, PUD 2020-0002, discuss some possible action regarding a request for a modification to the Silver Oak Planned Unit Development and Associated Development Agreement so as to modify the development standards in the area identified as cluster housing areas CC, DD, and EE, and modifying the boundaries of cluster housing area DD to incorporate 0.94 acres of area originally designated as open space on property zoned single-family 12,000 planned unit development located on the south side of Silver Oak Drive, east of Sienna Drive and Red Leaf Drive, and the parcel located southwest of Eagle Valley Ranch Road and further identified as APN 007-552-44, 007-552-38, 007-552-19, and finally 007-552-41. And yes.
Commissioner Wiggins, for the record, I need to read a statement here. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private capacity, I live in a previously developed phase of Silver Oak, and I am within the noticing area for this item. While I live in the noticing area, any benefit or detriment to me is no greater or lesser than any other similarly situated member of the public that may be affected by this matter. While I make this disclosure in the interest of transparency, I do not believe that the judgment of a reasonable person in this situation would be materially affected, and no abstention is necessary. Therefore, I will be voting on this matter. Thank you.
All right. Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have up on the board a slide which shows you kind of the setting we're looking at, Block CC, Block DD, Block EE, and it points to the area sort of northwest of Block DD, northeast of Block DD where the expansion is proposed. The Silver Oak PUD was actually approved on September 16, 1993. The original development agreement was approved on January 6, 1994. The development standards are included in the development agreement and are often referred to as variances in that agreement. The original approval of Silver Oak included 4 cluster housing areas, and they're identified as cluster housing areas. They were BB, CC, DD, and EE. For each of these cluster areas, per 2.2 of the development agreement, the maximum number of units are identified for each block. These blocks are allowed to be developed with a final map, utilizing the maximum number of units with the building types of zero lot line, townhomes, common wall, or similar units. Per the development agreement, the minimum lot size is 4,000 square feet. Included in the dimensional criteria is a lot coverage limitation of 35%, a maximum height of 28 feet to the ridge line, and various setback requirements. The boundaries of these cluster areas are on the tentative map. So I actually just went away from the map, but the tentative map that was approved back in '93 shows these cluster areas. The applicant is proposing to modify the boundaries of Block DD to expand it by 0.94 acres into an open space area, as well as to modify the development standards. The 0.94 acres is not a functional part of the golf course So it would be absorbed into future residential lots.
Did you say non-functional?
Yeah, non-functional. Page 1 of the staff report has a summary of the modifications that the staff is recommending. I think the only request that was before you that staff is not recommending approval of is a street side setback of 5 feet. And the reason the staff isn't supportive of that is because along streets, you have public utility easements with a width of 10 feet. So it'll just create conflict if there's a setback of 5, because you can't build in that PUE anyway. On the next slide, I've compared the existing to the single-family 6,000 zoning district, just to give you context of what the request is versus if we had a single-family 6,000. We don't have that. We have SF 12,000 with a PUD. As you know, with the planned unit development, in exchange for preservation of open space, the applicant has flexibility on his dimensional criteria. So in the case of these cluster parcels, if you will, the minimum lot size is 4,000 square feet. That's existing today. That's not a request that's before you. There's no proposal to change that from 4,000 square feet. That's why I chose single-family 6,000 as the comparison, just to give you some ideas. Right now, there's a 35% coverage limitation. In some zoning ordinances, you see coverage limitations where the building can only cover a certain portion of the lot. Carson City doesn't use lot coverage criteria. That doesn't exist if we are developing in a single-family 6,000. The applicant is proposing to eliminate a lot coverage limitation. The applicant's proposing a 10-foot front setback. That's existing, and in SF6, it would be a 20-foot. On the side setback, they're proposing a 5-foot, or if you have an attached unit, 0 with 10 feet on the other side. Existing is varying, and that's outlined in the development agreement and summarized in the staff report. If we were in single-family 6, we'd be looking at a 5-foot side setback. On the rear setback, if you take front access as opposed to an alley access, right now, they're proposing 10 feet. Existing is an average of 15 feet, which gets tricky when you have different lots to try to average a setback, but with a minimum of 10 feet, and single-family 6 would be 10 feet. The height, which I did receive a number of inquiries about the height, right now, there's some conflict. The conditions of approval of the tentative map say, I think it was 36 feet. The development, that was approved in 93. In 94, the development agreement was approved. That said 28 feet to ridge. As this commission knows, in Carson City, when we take measurements of building height, we use the building code for the measurement, and that says you're measuring to the midpoint of the roof. So they're proposing to stay with a 28-foot height, but we're proposing not to include a methodology. That silence would default to what we do throughout the rest of the city, which right now is the midpoint of the roof. If we were in single-family 6,000, we would have a height of 26 feet. So that just to give you some context, and I outlined it more clearly, I think, in the staff report, and I provided you with the development agreement, which clearly is the governing document. In the narrative, I did not show the strikeout of the 2-story element not exceeding 50% of the structure's frontage, or the no more than 2 units in a row should have the same setback. However, I have included that in the motion. I think they're number 8 and 9, if I remember right, in the summary of modifications to the development agreement. So the applicant asked that I clarify that on the record, so I'm clarifying that. Staff has crafted given that there's no increase in the unit counts, the impacts of the modifications that are before you will not be any different than what's in place right now. We're actually looking at reduction in the unit count, not an increase in unit count. So given that we're not going to have extra traffic, more water usage, more sewer usage, more police calls, so on and so forth, So we don't believe it will be more impactful. Also, if we go back to the map, you'll see the area surrounding these cluster housing areas are primarily golf course or vacant land. So there really will be minimal impact to adjacent residents. In considering this modification, you're considering the findings in the Municipal Code 17.07.005 and 17.09.050. In the staff report, we've gone through all of those findings, and we have been able to make those in the affirmative. The staff report, okay, I'm sorry, I lost my spot. There are conditions of approval, primarily engineering related and primarily related to Block DD and development of Block DD. That was included in the conditions of approval so that the applicant could understand what the staff expectation would be when Block DD does develop. But we are not proposing that those conditions of approval be incorporated into the development agreement. Louis Carriola and Mark Turner are, I believe, on the telephone. And Louis is from Manherd, and he's representing the applicant. Mark Turner is representing the property owner. I'm happy to go more in depth on anything if you'd like, or answer any questions. Thank you.
Pope, could you put the comparison chart back up? If I look at the front setback, the difference in those two is the garage. So theoretically, in the new proposed, for these three new pieces of the subdivision, the garages could be 10 feet.
Right. If you look at page 5 of your staff report, that articulates what the front setback is right now. And you have 4 options essentially. So right now today, the front setback is 18 feet to the garage if there's a driveway apron. 5 feet to the garage if there's no driveway apron. 10 feet to the living space, 10 feet to the 2-story elements. If you go one page over, you'll see they're proposing to retain the 18 feet to the garage if there is a driveway apron, and retaining the 10 feet to the living space. And if we go to page 1 of the staff report, if you look at number 5, modify the front setback requirements to state that the requirement is 10 feet to the house, 18 feet to the garage, measured from the back of sidewalk if there is a sidewalk on the property.
Okay. But you have the ability there to change the look a little bit of Silver Oak by being able to move garages more forward.
But they're not asking to do that. They're keeping the 18 feet for the garage.
I see. Okay, I got you now.
Okay, the other consideration, just as staff looked at this, I want to point this out, and I went back to the map that shows the cluster blocks. And this is kind of how Silver Oak's been handled. You heard Commissioner Wiggins make a disclosure that he's in a different phase of Silver Oak. Silver Oak has these different phases, and within the phase, they have consistency, but the consistency of one phase may not be consistent with a different phase. And so what you see on these blocks, and that's why I keep coming back to this map, is you can see these are really self-contained to a large extent. They're surrounded by either vacant land or the golf course. So what these setbacks are within this area really is not going to influence the quality of life, in my opinion, in a different phase. Each phase kind of has its own character, its own identity, its own set of standards. And but if we compare what was originally approved in 93 and 94 to what's proposed today, I think the big difference, I had a conversation, I think, with the chair about this. The biggest reason this is before you as a modification to the planned unit development is because there's a decrease in open space. Otherwise, the staff would be able to handle it as a modification to the PUD, but the staff is not authorized to modify a PUD when there's a modification or when there's a reduction in open space. In the past, the dimensional criteria based on a 2005 decision, I think it was either 2005 or 2007, it's in the staff report. That the decision was made then to handle the dimensional criteria through variance. It's not a perfect answer by far, but it was the decision that's been made. It was made and honored. So what's come before this commission over the past few years for different phases, and it's come in the form of a variance, is basically to create the dimensional criteria for various phases. The difference today is you don't have a variance in front of you for a particular phase that would be strictly dimensional criteria because we do have that 0.94 acre reduction in open space. So that kind of kicks it out of the variance bucket and puts it into a modification to the PUD. But in terms of the dimensional criteria, I think it's very minimal, the changes. And I think the expansion of the residential by 0.94 acres is, in the big scheme, fairly minimal. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, before you move on, could we ask Ms. Commissioner Preston? I think she was not sure she's able to get on. So look, can we ask her specifically now to test her ability to make comments at this point?
Okay. I don't see her picture up there, but Commissioner Preston, are you there? We've lost our volume again in here. Okay. Can you hear us now? Any other? Yeah, is there any questions for staff at this time? We can get Commissioner Preston on, maybe we can get her comments, but can we go ahead and have the applicant come on?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Perry.
For the record.
Could you bring this closer to me? They're also having trouble hearing you with it.
Absolutely. How's that? Good. Thank you. So could you go back to the table, Hope? And I just wanted to clarify, so I'm really repeating what I think I understand. Where it says the existing column, that's basically what exists in the plan unit development, correct?
The combination of the 1993 Silver Oak Planned Unit Development coupled with the 1994 Development Agreement.
Okay, which is going to be different than what would be normal in the city because it is a planned unit development, right?
Correct. Essentially, what you can do in a planned unit development is in exchange for preservation of open space, you can have flexibility on your dimensional criteria, which includes lot sizes, setbacks, and the like.
Okay, could you go to the map then, please? So the agenda item here has, I guess, really, to me, two things, right? One is for Block DD, a change in the density of the number of units, and some adjustments that have a net decrease in open space of 0.94 acres. I saw on the actual map that it's adding on one side and relinquishing some to the golf course on the other side, actually, a little slice or sliver of it. And the other thing is the conditions in the plan unit development for just these three blocks are the ones that are in the summary of modifications, right? For just EE, DD, and CC, and not any of the rest of development within this plan unit development, just those three blocks.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Can we have the applicant then? Can't hear you yet. Keep working. We can't hear. Hang on 1 second. No, we can't hear the
Hello, this is
applicant.
Lewis. This is Lewis. I put my hand up. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
You can hear Lewis. I'm sorry. I'm experiencing a lag in the audio and the video. I'm seeing Commissioner Preston on my screen right now.
Louis, are you on the phone?
All right, so we don't have the applicant.
Mr. Chair, I can see Lewis, but there is no audio feed coming in from him. He was on the line with his phone earlier, and I'm not sure what happened, but he's no longer there.
Okay. Well, Mr. Lewis, we can see you, but we cannot hear you. Is Mark Turner on?
Yes, it looks like Mark Turner's here.
All right. Can you put him on, please?
You hear me on the phone?
Yes,
Hello?
who's speaking?
This is Mark Turner. I think Lewis was trying to get in. He said he was having some latency issues as far as the transmission was concerned, but I can do my best as he tries to get in. Maybe he can hear me. I'm actually on the phone. The WebEx isn't working for me, so I switched to my phone connection.
Okay. The conditions of approval, do you all have you all reached an agreement with the staff and are okay with these conditions of approval?
Yeah, I think that we've been able to exchange information through the process, and we're okay with the conditions of approval. I looked at some of the engineering conditions and had a chance to clarify some of those items with Mr. Pote. I think I understand what he wants, and he understands our issues with those things. So I think we're okay. Now, if Lewis gets on, he may have some comments. Hopefully he has the opportunity to call in. So I'm not sure how you're able to determine if there's anyone waiting on the line or not, but he may try to use his phone rather than the WebEx.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Are there any questions for the engineering part of the application? No? Okay, no, sir.
Okay, I'm here if you do.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Is there any public comment? Don't hear any.
Louis, are you on the call? Mark Turner, are you still on the call?
I'm still here.
Okay, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. This is Hope, the planning manager. My understanding in my conversation with Louis, I'm sorry we're having this technical problem, was that he's good with the staff report and the conditions. He did want to go on the record that given the reduction in, I think it's block DD, that you do want to let the commission know that should there be an opportunity to build those lots in some other place at Silver Oak, although that place has not been identified, you may come back before this commission with a request to that effect. Other than that, my understanding was he was okay with that, but he definitely wanted to be transparent about that and make it clear that if there was an opportunity to fit those lots in someplace that seemed to work, he may come back with that. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's correct. That's an accurate summation of the intent.
Okay, so have you had a chance to look at the staff report and how I've worded this summary of modifications to the development agreement? And do you feel like that's?
Yes, I've read that, and I think we're on track there. Everything looks fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Plomo?
I see Terry Preston on the phone. So let's see if Desi sees Terry Preston on the call-in line and can get her on.
Okay.
Desi?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hey, I've got 3 different things going on. I've got your WebEx thing where it's showing one meeting. I've got Hope talking on another meeting, and then I hear something different on the phone.
Close WebEx, stop watching on the internet, and just listen to us on the phone. Because they won't be synced up.
Closing everything I can see.
You sound fine. There's no background. This is Lee. You sound fine. We hear you really well here now.
Okay, now I'm hearing a delay from when I talk to you. How come that's on there still?
Commissioner, we're not real sure, Commissioner Preston, but we can hear you fine. Do you have any questions on this item?
No, I just want to know. Hold on a second. I got to leave the room because the computer's still doing talking, and it's supposed to be off. Oh, God. Anyway, no, what I wanted to do is I did want to say that the make a comment that the reduction of the open space was minimal, and the reduction of units it makes sense. So I did want to say that I am in support of this particular project because it's a nice infill project. It's at Silver Oak. But then the other question I have is because I also live in another phase of Silver Oak, was I supposed to do a disclaimer too?
Commissioner Preston was not in the noticing area. Commissioner Wiggins was, and that was the difference.
Okay. All right. Wanted to verify that. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further comment from anyone before we bring this back to the board? Okay. Shall we try for a motion?
Sure. This is Commissioner Perry. I will make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the modifications to the Silver Oak Plan Unit Development and Associated Development Agreement, specifically Section 2.2 of the Development Agreement, as noted in items 1 through 11, based on the findings as identified in the staff report and the conditions of approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, Commissioner Doors, for the record, I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Item E4 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a zoning map amendment to change the zoning from public regional to multifamily apartment on land located at 3410 Booty Way, APN 010037004. Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is seeking to rezone 6.45 acres of a 7.81 acre parcel from public regional to multifamily apartment. The Board of Supervisors, and this is the background Commissioner Perry was asking about, the Board of Supervisors had solicited proposals for affordable housing on this property. As part of the request for proposal, the city identified to, or assigned to itself the responsibility for rezoning this property. When you consider a zoning map amendment, you consider three findings. Master plan consistency, compatible with adjacent land uses and will not have a detrimental impact to properties in the vicinity, and it will not negatively impact the existing or planned public services and facilities. In terms of the master plan consistency, so the first of three findings, the master plan designation of this property is high-density residential. The multifamily apartment zoning designation corresponds to that land use designation and will allow for the implementation of the master plan. In terms of land use compatibility, this property is interesting. It is between the city's corporate yard and public works departments, the parks departments out there. You have large parking lots with, working buildings there. You also have the wastewater treatment plant right there as well behind the public works department. And then to the south, or to the north, you have single-family homes. So I see this as an opportunity for a transitional use between the city's corporate yard and the single-family homes. The multifamily, I believe, will be compatible with the residential in that the activity times will be consistent. Times of activity will be the same, whether it's single-family or multifamily. Times of quiet will be the same. And in thinking about this for this meeting this evening, I was thinking about that apartment project you had recently on Little Lane. And remember, we had the single family right behind it, and we had those apartments, and it seemed like the right transitional use, and you had the post office right next door there. So I think very similarly, you have this intensive city use, and then you have this piece of property, which will be developed at some point, and it is in the master plan for high-density residential. And then you have the single family. So I think going residential there will be compatible with the single family residential. Our third finding is regarding public services and facilities. This is an infill site that already receives fire and police services. We don't have a project in front of us. What you have in front of you is a zoning map amendment. So any proposed project would need to complete project impact reports and show that any existing facilities can meet or comply with city standards, or there would be mitigations, conditions of approval, as you frequently see when you're looking at projects and you're looking at the findings and the conditions of approval. The impact reports must include the demand imposed by neighboring entitled projects. So when we look at this, we have right across the street on Airport Road, the Lampa Ranch East project, which you have a tentative map over there, and we know that north of, in the southern portion's a tentative map for single family, and in the northern portion of Lampa East is multifamily zoning, and that will develop as multifamily. You'll also remember that with Lampa East, there was a lot of focus on the impact of Lampa East on Airport Road, and there were those roundabouts. I think it was 3 different roundabouts were required as part of that project. But we're not talking about a project today. What you're looking at is you're looking at amending the zoning map to allow multifamily development on that property. You did receive 4 written comments regarding this zoning map application. The specific comments and questions were, 1, who is requesting this change and why? First of all, the change is consistent with the master plan. So I think that's really important. Nobody's changing our master plan. Our master plan has this designated as high-density residential. The reason for this request coming before you is the RFP was put out for affordable housing. in this location, and we want to be transparent about that. And as part of that RFP, it assigned the responsibility to the city to amend the zoning to multifamily apartment. The city's real property manager is our applicant. We have Dan Stuckey on the line on behalf of the city. He is wearing the applicant's hat. He is representing the city as a landowner. There was a second question about deed restriction based on the smells from the wastewater treatment plant. This is a zoning map amendment. We don't condition zoning map amendments. When a project is before us, that may be something that does get conditioned for a deed restriction. Having said that, this will most likely be rental properties, and so a renter wouldn't necessarily see a deed restriction, a property owner would. The group who was selected as a result of the RFP, there was a lot of information provided that Dan Stuckey can speak to more specifically, and they are well aware of the presence of the wastewater treatment plant. There was also a comment in the letters about the wall that runs along the rear of the property lines of the homes on Desatoya. That wall is actually not on the site. It's not on the city's land. So the city obviously wouldn't go onto somebody else's property to repair a wall. Again, we don't have a development project in front of us. When we do, we'll see how that transitional area works, but at this point, we don't have that. There was a question about traffic. Again, it's a zoning map amendment, so we don't condition a zoning map amendment. Having said that, with Lampa East, there was a lot of discussion about the traffic on Airport Road, which was alluded to in one of the letters, and there is a requirement for 3 different roundabouts based on that traffic and to have it so people don't speed. The other item that came up was schools. And this commission knows every single time you look at residential development, the conversation goes to schools and school capacity. And we know the school department's doing what they can with their zones to address capacity issues. This, again, is a zoning map amendment. We cannot condition a zoning map amendment. So I did want to proactively acknowledge those 4 letters that you received and speak specifically to the comments that were in them. Going back to the zoning map amendment that's before you, you have 3 findings of fact. You are making a recommendation to the board, and it will be up to the board and only the board to amend the zoning map. Again, Dan Stuckey, I believe, is on the line representing the city as the applicant. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Hope, do you know if that housing development has a homeowners association?
I do not know.
So if that wall is not maintained by a homeowners association, then it's going to be an individual? Would that?
Right, and even if there is a homeowners association, you would have to look and see if they are responsible for the wall.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? How about the applicant? Can we get the applicant on the line?
Get Dan Stuckey, city engineer, for the record. I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Do you have any comments that you would like to make?
Just a couple. I think Hope explained the process. Obviously, the vision of the board to provide, more affordable workforce housing in Carson City. There was some due diligence done on this parcel as part of the board directed staff to do that. That included, obviously, an appraisal, title report, environmental assessment as well. The RFP, very detailed RFP, we had 2 proposers on it. Of course, they went back to the board for final selection there. So I did want to point that out. One thing that the board was very, they emphasized with the RFP was including a public involvement component. So I did want to just hit on that this will, as part of the requirement of this project, there will be public involvement that'll happen once, they come in and start to form that project. There will be that component. And again, that board thought that was very important. And yeah, this is really just the first step of the process is the zoning map amendment.
Any other questions for the applicant? Public comment? Do we have some public comment?
What?
Yeah. Hello? Is there any public comment?
Do you want to make a public comment? No. I think they're asking it for.
Yeah, we can hear you. If you please identify yourself.
This is mine. Hello?
Hello?
No, they cannot hear me. Hello?
We can hear you. Please identify yourself.
Okay. Yes, my name is Jennifer Blake, and we live on Desatoya. So our home backs up to the property in question. So, quick question. We have always been told that this wall, when we bought our house, we were told that the wall behind our house was city-owned. And now we're learning it's not. Is that correct?
What we're going to do is we'll take your comment, we'll write down your questions, and then we will answer them once we're complete.
Okay.
Okay?
So we're questioning.
You're questioning the
So we
ownership
are-
of the wall.
Correct. And we're also questioning, so I know that this is just to change the zoning of it, not to talk about how many stories these apartments would be or anything like that? Because that's what we're concerned with.
Okay. The process will be, and we have your questions, we will, once we get all the comments in, we will go ahead and answer your questions for you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Is there any other comment? Yeah, is that Alex eating chips? Okay. Hope we can, if we
Mr.
bring it
Chair.
back to the chairman.
Right, Mr. Chair, I'd like the applicant, Dan Stuckey, to speak to both the location of the wall and to review the public participation process and the review of that process.
Right. Dan, could you do that for us?
Yes, sir. So as far as I guess the question on the wall ownership, my understanding is it's not city owned, but I mean, obviously we can check into that. As far as, and one thing I left out, so there's the public involvement component. So, after they come in for their project review and start developing, they'll have, what they proposed in their RFP was kind of a community outreach meeting, where they would gather and seek public input on, some of, the features of the project. I know there was at least one meeting. I don't have the RFP. I probably won't be able to find it right in front of me, but there may have been a couple more than that. The other thing that I didn't point out on kind of my initial intro is there is a requirement for a development agreement with this project. So it will go back to the Board of Supervisors for that to be reviewed and that may happen. I'm not sure exactly the timeline on when that'll happen, but in that development agreement, they'll talk about, certain features of the project that the board might want to see, possibly some restrictions. I mean, obviously the city will be conveying this land and the intent of the land is for affordable workforce housing. So they'll obviously want to ensure that that's what happens long term. So those types of things will be worked out through a development agreement. As far as the timing on when all that will happen, I think, if this goes through, when that would happen, I think probably over the next, 3 to 6 months probably is when this project will really start developing, and they'll be seeking some of that community input.
Okay, thank you. and I think also to answer the question, we're not designing anything. We have no idea what this may look like, whether it's 6-story, 80-story, or 1-story, how many parking garages there are. We don't have any idea what we're looking at yet. Or just, 80 stories won't fit in the zoning district. Okay.
Yeah. I think all we know at this point is, potentially, I think if it was maximum density there, it could be up to 160 units after the zoning map amendment. But obviously, there's some restrictions on that site that might not make that possible. But as far as, site plan and details like that, that just hasn't been worked out yet.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions for, yes.
Dan, I have a question for you. This is Commissioner Tingle. Did anyone reach out to the CSH group? And if they did, they're a group that does affordable housing, and they are a housing solutions group that does also supportive housing, which sometimes with affordable housing, you need that supportive housing aspect along with it. And so I was just wondering if whoever won the RFP, which I do not know who that is, if they had an opportunity to reach out to this group to maybe potentially do some really beneficial aspects of this development for affordable housing. And I was just wondering if anybody had reached out to this particular group.
Good question, Commissioner Tingle. I personally haven't. I don't believe anybody on the city side has. I mean, as far as the developer that was selected, I'm not sure if they have either. I mean, I'd be happy to pass that information along to them. We did, when the RFP went out, it sounds like this is more of a support group that can help, a development realize its, vision or potential. But we did try to, get the message out about the RFP at the time it was released and get it out to as many of those groups that possibly would propose on it as possible. But as far as this specific group, I'm not sure if anybody has reached out.
Well, this is a financing group. So if whoever the developer was that wanted to get financing for this development, that's what this particular group does. And it works with developers on their financing, lower cost, lower interest, if they include certain aspects of supportive housing in their development. So I thought that it would be a good opportunity for whoever the developer is that was awarded the RFP, that if they were looking for a financing group to do something maybe a little bit innovative here, that they would be a good option to look at. So that's, just kind of why I keep pushing this group, is they have some really good ideas and they're nationwide. And I just think that maybe Carson City needs to start looking at that.
I would be happy to pass that information along.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Commissioner Doors, for the record.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say, not only do I think it's in spirit, I know we're not at a planning stage yet, but I think in spirit, affordable housing is good. I think that the entire move is in a good direction. Additionally, it's sort of kind of the prerogative over this year is to, as I understand it, to sort of clean up master plan and zoning conflicts. And it sounds like this is going to kill two birds with one stone, what we're doing here. So, for the record, I just wanted to say that before we vote.
Having said that, are you going to make a motion?
I'd love to.
I apologize. We haven't had discussion yet. Is there any further discussion from the commissioners?
All right.
Commissioner Perry, I apologize.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman. Looking at this and going back and looking at the master plan, am I coming in okay? There we go, that's better. I mean, this is the way it's been on the master plan, at least until 2011, probably back to 26, that it was foreseen in the master plan as multifamily residential or multifamily apartment, right? And that seems consistent as a transition zone. And as planning person Hope had mentioned, this is simply a recommendation to the city supervisors to rezone this. It's not an approval of a project. And I think it's important that the people who sent in comments, because they're immediately fast forwarding to, oh, there's going to be, this 3-story apartment complex or something there. Multifamily apartment, actually, I'm looking at the zoning code here, section 18.4, allows for duplexes, townhouses, high-density apartments, and single-family dwellings. So there's quite a number of things that can be built there. It just is the highest density that we have for zoning in the city. So, I think it's consistent to make the recommendation to the city council, and then those issues that I think the residents have along there that are along Desatoya Drive on the other side can then meet and discuss about what mitigating factors there might be for what is actually built there, and their concerns can be addressed at that point. So just my comment on that, because I think Jennifer Blake asked, this is zoning only, right? And not a project that's being approved. So thank you.
Any other comments? Now.
All right. I'd like to make a motion if the time is right. Commissioner Doors for the record.
Go ahead.
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the zoning map amendment ZA-2020-0004 as presented.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Second. There's a second by Commissioner Tingle. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no?
Aye.
Good, motion carries. Mr. Plummel. Item F.
Okay, yep. Good evening. Lee Plummel, Community Development Director. Just going to give you a quick update on Planning Commission related items. Items that have been at the Planning Commission in the past that went to the board in April. They finalized the Kelvin Street zoning. That was the single family 1 acre area, and also introduced the ordinance for the hemp moratorium as recommended by the Planning Commission, the hemp cultivation moratorium. And that ordinance is going to go to second reading on May 7th to the Board of Supervisors for final action. We'll anticipate bringing some suggested regulations back to you and more of a presentation as you requested on the difference between hemp and marijuana. We'll have to kind of see how the meetings are going over the next month or two. Obviously, this is a learning experience today. You guys, as I told IT, you're jumping in more than anybody has, trying to have public comment and people calling in for each item. So, I'll debrief with IT and we'll try to keep sorting this out in anticipation of, needing to have some sort of remote participation at least sometime into the future. Which, by the way, I know this is Wednesday evening. The governor's stuff expires tomorrow, but we're not sure what the regulations are going to be on Friday yet. I'm in the same boat you are right now, so we're going to wait and see what the governor says, and the city's going to then come up with a plan for office openings and public meetings and things. So looking ahead on your May 27th Planning Commission meeting, which, by the way, you're one of the state commissions that's required to have a meeting every month that hasn't been waived by any of the governor's actions. So while there's other advisory boards that, have decided to not have meetings, you're actually one where if you have business, you're required to have a meeting. So we're still trying to figure out how to allow you to have that meeting. So on May 27th, we have the annual growth management report, and we'll be doing that, which includes the 2021 residential allocations. We also have a special use permit for a fourplex on Lapeer Drive and a rezoning of vacant property at Silver Sage in Clearview. So again, about relatively short meeting, but have a couple items for you to review. It's across the street from a project that you reviewed recently in that same vicinity. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
Lee, I'm sorry. There was a Nevada District Court ruling about not throwing out the lawsuit related to the hemp. I think Carson City had requested a dismissal of a lawsuit, and that was denied. Is that any relation to the hemp ruling?
No, that was the summary, the summary judgment on the cultivation.
Right?
The thing we considered was just the processing,
Okay.
not the growing.
Okay. All right.
No, the growing,
On
but I think
Buzzy's
the
Ranch.
lawsuit had to do with property owned by Carson City, not necessarily the regulations under which hemp would be grown. So
I thought it was property owned by Buzzy's Ranch. They wanted to cultivate. And that lawsuit was not thrown out, it was upheld.
So
So it's continuing on.
I don't know if the DA's office wants, it's probably not agendized to discuss litigation with the city right now, but it was on city open space on which the former owners had rights to continue agricultural operations. But, so, that does not have an effect on the moratorium going forward, if that was part of the question. But yeah, we'd have to look. But offhand, I'm not sure of the status of it, and I don't know how Ben might know, but if you have questions on it, maybe we can answer it for you later. Thanks.
Are there any other commissioners' comments or reports?
I just had a question, Commissioner Perry. So we delayed the Title 18 review workshops, and I'm assuming we don't have a date set for those. We're still waiting to hear what the rules will be. Is that right?
Correct. We're waiting to see what the rules will be. In the mean, there's other things going on, obviously, now. In the meantime, if it gets delayed much, I think the plan would be to start posting some draft materials for the public to start reviewing and start commenting on. But I think it is critical for, if you're going to have a public workshop, to be able to get the feedback from the public. So that's the purpose of delaying. Yeah.
Well, we could, depending upon what the meeting rules are going to be, this room might be easier to use if we had a workshop with about 10 or 12 people showing up. Well, I guess until we get something more definitive from the state, we're just kind of in limbo. All right, any other comments? All right, the public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there any further comment from the public?
Mr. Chair, I just received an email from Mr. Johnson, our ADA, and he would like me to let you know that Commissioner Eswine was a no vote on item E4.
Oh, okay. Can you make that
I'll
as
make
part of
the
the record?
change.
And we will announce it, that the vote then for item E4 was, what? 6-1?
6-1.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Eswine.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Dorns for the record. Commissioner Eswine also, I'm not sure if he has audio or what, but he also shared over the app here, the WebEx app, and so I'll make it part of the public record too, that his belief that this process was a little flawed today with how we did the meeting. So again, I'm conveying that for Commissioner Eswine as he wrote it through WebEx. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Having nothing more, we're adjourned. Well, I asked for it and I didn't get any.
Oh, I didn't hear you ask, sorry.
Would you confirm that there's
we
no?
adjourn. Commissioner Doors for the record moves we adjourn.
All right, thank you.